Hi everybody, welcome to another video. We're going to have a bit of a chat today about the running costs when it comes to actually owning a van and sort of going out weekends and sort of spending time out on park ups. Obviously you've got the obvious stuff with fuel and that. What about maintenance and sort of general sort of looking after the van? So got a couple of figures and sort of based on sort of, obviously we've had the van now for over a year, so it's give us a bit of an idea and sort of thought might as well sort of share that with you and sort of give you a bit of an insight into what we think sort of the running costs are on the general sort of day-to-day usage. So where we are today, we're actually walking down the Peak Forest Canal. I was going to do some photography work over in New Mills, so I thought, right, I had a park up at Bugsworth Basin last night, which is one of the things that we sort of, it sounds crazy, but almost every weekend we try and get away in the van, even if it's just one night. But it's quite nice because it basically means that you can get, you know, sort of some quite nice sort of some different spots. I mean, inside the van, it's inside the van, but as soon as you sort of open the curtains and take the bungs out, yeah, you could be absolutely anywhere. It's absolutely brilliant. So it's the sort of thing we try and do every weekend if we can. Obviously there's some weekends, just logistical reasons or time, you just can't do it, but yeah, for the most part we'll try and get away as much as we can. But again, that rolls into the cost. Bugsworth Basin, that's free of charge to stop. If you stop at the navigation inn, as long as you go in there and sort of either have a drink or sort of buy some food, yeah, you tell them what your registration is, they don't sort of charge the car park at all, you can stay there overnight. So that doesn't really incur a cost, but some places you do actually have to pay for sort of stopping overnight. One of the places that we use in the Lake District, they normally charge sort of £10 per person per night, but you get full facilities there. So you're actually sort of paying for the showers, the toilets, and the fact that, you know, sort of you've got a reasonable sort of area to stop in. So just a few little bits that sort of you have to take into consideration. So the most obvious cost that you've got when you go out and about in your van is the fuel cost. I mean, yes, admittedly the fuel has come down a little bit recently. The last fill that we did was at 150.7 for a litre of diesel, which, yeah, isn't cheap, but it's a lot cheaper than it was. We're looking at about 195 about 6 months ago. So yeah, it is coming down. As far as fuel economy goes, tend to take it steady, so we average between sort of 35 and 40 to the gallon when we're out and about. Depends on sort of the terrain and stuff like that. Obviously doing a lot of sort of hilly stuff in the lakes, it does bring it down a bit, but it sort of gets counteracted by the cruise home. We tend to go sort of cross country rather than motorway anyway, but yeah, we sort of average between 35 and 40 normally. Obviously I do use it as a daily runner, and the commute does bring that down quite a lot. If I'm just doing a commute across a week, I'll probably get about 32 to the gallon, so it does bring it down a bit, but that's a general cost to me rather than sort of going out sort of for a weekend away on a park up sort of cost. But definitely it works out a lot cheaper than originally sort of was sort of 6 months ago, but the price is still high, so it's something you'd have to factor in. It's like, yeah, we're quite lucky that we can sort of got sort of the Peak District fairly close, so it doesn't really use that much fuel up for going away in sort of beautiful conditions like this. But if you're sort of fairly built up and you're heading out into the countryside, doing more distance, obviously it's going to cost you a bit more, but it's something to factor in. General sort of rule of thumb, I would say a decent weekend away in the lakes would probably cost us about 100 quid. Now quite handily, I don't actually live too far from work, so general sort of maintenance costs for me would base it on sort of about 10,000 miles a year, which, yeah, is a fairly average amount. Bearing in mind we try and get away almost every weekend, and since November we've been in the Lake District at least one weekend a month since then. We're sort of in the middle of April now, sort of 2 weeks ago we're actually in the Lake District again. So yeah, we do quite a lot of runs. I apologise if it's a bit windy at the moment, but it seems to have suddenly got up. But it's not a bad sort of baseline to sort of base it on, because it's not like, you know, sort of it's high days and holidays van. We do use it, you know, as much as we possibly can, so you do tend to sort of work out on that sort of 10,000 miles you're going to be servicing once a year. General sort of service parts that we do: oil filter, oil, Normally do air filter and pollen filter, fuel filters every couple of years. So yeah, those sort of costs, they're not too bad to actually sort of factor in. Oil at the moment has gone up. We have about a 7.5 litre fill on ours, so it costs us about £45 to £50 for the oil. Filter wise, you're looking about £15 for the lot, so it's not too bad at all. Obviously, if you're servicing yourself, you've not got labour cost. If you're paying for someone to service with all the bits, you probably need to factor in around about £200 a year, but yeah, it's still not too bad really. So like I say, it varies on where you go to as far as sort of service prices go. If you're doing it yourself, obviously you save on the labour costs. Average labour these days for a service, it seems to sort of rack up, so you end up paying between 150 and 200 depending on how much of a service you have on it. If you just have an oil service, obviously it's a lot cheaper. If you're going for a full service, it'll cost you a bit more. And also there's other maintenance costs involved, so brake pads, brake discs and stuff like that. It'll vary on what you've got and sort of what sort of bits you need doing. It's the sort of thing, brakes, if you've had them done, they'll probably last you a few years. Other bits and bobs, like sort of jog component failure, is something that you can factor in. Cost wise on that, I mean, I had to replace the EGR, that cost me about 90 quid, but I did do it myself, so it saved a bit of money on that side of things. But that's the sort of thing. The other thing to remember is the MOT is due every year. So as far as MOT costs go, it varies. You can have, I've actually seen them still at £25 to get an MOT done. The official sort of amount is nearer to £50 for an MOT. So it varies on that, but that's something you've got to factor in. As long as everything's sort of fairly sort of straight on your van, so you've got no problems with, you know, so any repairs that need doing, that is literally what your MOT is going to cost. But if you do need some repairs doing, that's something to factor in. I mean, last year mine went through fine. Year before I needed to do brake pipes on it, which if I was sort of paying for someone to do that, you'd probably factor in about £100 for it. So it's something just to consider, and I tend to sort of try and keep a little bit of a pot to one side just in case anything does need to be replaced as part of the MOT. It's just something to keep in mind just in case. But that side of it, it's a mandatory thing for the MOT, so whether it's a car or a van or whatever, you got to factor that in regardless. So it doesn't really make any difference whether you're sort of driving a car around or a van, you're still going to have the same sort of cost. So it's just one of those things. I suppose the other thing to consider is the cost of heating and stuff like that in the van. Obviously we've got a diesel heater which taps directly into the fuel tank. You only really notice any sort of change in sort of fuel level normally when we've actually filled up and done the calculation to see what the MPG is. It hits that normally if it's really cold or you've got it on high for any long period of time. I think I roughly worked out on the current sort of fuel prices, it costs on sort of normal sort of mid-range around about 18p an hour to run it. So it's not much at all, and it doesn't take long to warm the van up, so it's really quite handy for that. Cost for cooking, we use the small 450 gram canisters. They're about 30 quid for a dozen, 30 quid for half a dozen, but we still actually haven't finished the first half dozen that we bought way back in April last year. So there you go. Hopefully that's given you a few insights in sort of general running costs and what sort of we tend to encounter. But obviously it's different for every van. It's different to you know, sort of what heating systems you got in and stuff like that, and how you actually fuel it. But hopefully it's given you some idea. But yeah, if you enjoyed it, please do give us a thumbs up and subscribe if you've not. You know, a bit sporadic on the uploads just lately, but yeah, that's just down to the fact we're really busy at the minute. But yeah, we'll try and do as much as we can. Probably do some more sort of out and about videos rather than just to do with the van as well. But yeah, for now, thanks for watching. We'll see you again next time. Take care.